Martin O'Donnell from Sustainability. How are you, sir?
Very well, Pete. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm very well. Thanks for being involved in Recruitment Journeys, the podcast
Pleasure. Thanks for
series.
having me.
You've been on holiday?
I had a little break. Yeah, I nipped up to Boomerang Beach up near Foster for a week, which was beautiful. And I was away for a 50th last week, and we've actually taken the team away next weekend for a couple of days, just as a little mini break down to
Nice.
Southern Highlands. So yeah, good.
You lucky New South Wales people.
I
We,
know.
me and my family we had a little holiday last week. There's a
Did you go?
there's a park about 4.7k in that direction, and we went there for 45 minutes. It was lovely to get away. It was really nice. Really
Little
nice.
staycation. Beautiful.
Yeah. Well, mate, again, thank you so much for being involved. Much appreciated. This is Recruitment Journeys. We're in our second series, and as it says on the tin, it's a podcast that focuses on the journeys of selected Australian recruitment legends like yourself. And we talk about your journey and how you got from there to there. And I suppose for the purpose of the podcast, we tend to put the people that we speak to into boxes, into categories, and to focus on a certain element of your journey, Martin. And for the purpose of this podcast, we're gonna call you the recruiter who played two halves, which shall become apparent why when we get into the discussion.
Yep.
But we'll get into it. I've already given the viewers and the listeners a little bit of an introduction as to who you are, Martin. But in your own words, who is Martin O'Donnell?
Yeah, so I'm a co-founder of Sustainability, and I also sit on the board of our broader group, which includes Sustain Digital, Lotus People, and Sustain Health. So we've got three sister brands that we work very closely with, that we've helped launch over the last 5 years. But yeah, our day job is finance recruiter and director at Sustainability.
Yeah. And you all sit in the same room, right? You all sit in the same open plan space.
Yeah. Health sit in the east wing, but the three white collar brands will sit very closely together. But yeah, we're all on the same floor, all work 2 meters apart.
Of course, socially distanced, of course. But when pre-COVID and everything's coming along, how many people are you in the office?
There's 50 in the group.
50 in the group. Yeah. Wow. Okay. Yeah. I remember coming to see you a couple of years ago, and I remember walking into the office, and it was the first time I'd been in the office when all of your new brands have been humming along, and didn't feel like a recruitment office. It just looked. I mean, there was beanbags everywhere. I think somebody was doing yoga in the corner. There was music playing. It just had great energy. It was cool.
That's fantastic. It's been great to get. Yeah, and it's been great to get back into the office and see everybody again. And yeah, the environment's fantastic. So yeah, good to see everybody and get back to a little bit of normality.
Yeah, well, hopefully we're not too far behind you down here in Victoria. Right. So
fingers crossed.
I start all these conversations the same way, Martin, which is a classic question. I'm always curious to know how and why did you break into the wonderful world of recruitment?
I think not unusually, I fell into it. I was a graduate trainee at McDonald's at the time. I caught up with a friend of mine who was in Rec to Rec and talked to her about my frustrations in the job and what my ambitions were. And she suggested recruitment. I think what I enjoyed about the catering, I'd done a fair amount of it before, was service, customer service. I guess there's a finite element to the projects. You've got your service, you serve your lunch, your breakfast, your dinners, or whatever, and there's an immediate feedback mechanism to that. And I suppose that's not dissimilar to running a recruitment process. And with all of that involved, she thought I could make it in recruitment. So I think she just wanted to make a fee out of me, which she did. So she referred me to Badenoch and Clark, and I was fortunate enough to get that job.
Yeah, I remember speaking to a recruitment leader many years ago, and he used to tell me that he loved getting people from the hospitality industry because they had that element of customer service, which I found ironic and I probably disagree because I used to run pubs before I got into recruitment.
Okay, yeah.
And the old adage, the customer is always right. I used to fundamentally disagree with that statement.
Maybe not at 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
I think with it, it's really hard work, isn't it? Like, so you're working long hours. You're always on your feet. You're always on the go. They're skinny margin businesses, so you're often under resourced. So you tend to work pretty hard in those sorts of gigs. But you know, to be successful or enjoy it, you've got to have a fair amount of energy, and you've got to enjoy dealing with people day in, day out. So
absolutely.
I thought it was a good grounding.
Yeah, perfect. But then Baden and Clark, I mean, that would have been a phenomenal starting point for your career. That was a great brand back in the day.
Absolutely.
So did they have a particularly impressive induction and training program?
They did, and I was so their model was hire rookies, train them up, keep them for as long as they possibly could, and then they sort of disappeared off into other businesses after the standard 3 to 4 years. I had a fantastic manager, Sarah White, when I first started, and she took me under her wing, knocked some of the edges off what was a fairly rough 22-year-old, and taught me recruitment. So took that and then moved to Australia.
Not all of the edges, though, Martin. There's still a few rough edges there, isn't there?
Much more polished than I was going in.
All right, cool. So then you moved to Australia. So sadly, in a kind of 45-minute podcast, we don't have the opportunity to speak about all of your career, so we have to kind of condense it a little bit. But in brief summary, you had two very healthy periods with two very well-known brands.
Yep.
HJB, Hamilton, James and Bruce, who obviously also evaporated into other mergers and acquisitions over the years. But back in the day, HJB was proper tier one business, right? It was one of the best businesses in the Australian market. So you had a really good spell with HJB, and then you had a really good spell with Charterhouse, achieving management. Was it directorship with Charterhouse?
Yeah.
So how big did your role get with Charterhouse?
Both firms are reasonably similar. HJB was in growth mode. They were just about to try to list, and they wanted to expand their temp book and their temp business. So I came in to run a temp desk and ended up running all of their finance functions for them. And then went away traveling for a year, came back. Charterhouse had just started up, so working with a bunch of guys that I'd worked with before at HJB, and helped grow out their finance function for them, and then took on some broader operational responsibilities for them as well, helping out with some systems implementations and the like. So it was a great role, but I guess, and I'd really enjoyed both those businesses going through that enormous growth phase. But I guess I got to a point where I thought that there was a couple of things that I didn't necessarily agree with regards to how much investment there was in training and development, and felt that maybe I could add something a little bit different to that equation.
So that's a crucial point in your career, right? So you've got some real skin in the game, you've got some management experience, you've got some operational experience, you've been involved in the building and the growth of a business, but obviously the cogs started turning. Look, the beautiful thing about our industry, right, is if you are entrepreneurial and a bit of a risk taker, and you know your market, the barrier to entry is reasonably low. But when you first started thinking about launching your own business, in your mind, what did it look like? What was the gap that you were trying to fill?
I think it came back to what I was just saying. I'd worked with some brilliant recruiters, but I just felt that the key had been, and I don't want to speak ill of the dead, but it was just that they weren't necessarily always looking after everybody within the business, and there hadn't been that training and development put in place. And I just felt that there was an opportunity there to take all of the positives that I'd learned out of both of those businesses and learn from some of the mistakes that they'd made, maybe, and arrogantly felt that I could do it a bit differently. And so I'd been approached by a couple of different people to set up new ventures with, so that I also got I guess it's a bit of a push and pull. I was open to the opportunities, and then I was approached on a couple of things. They weren't quite right for whatever reason, and then myself and Pete were talking one day about that, and he'd had similar experiences in Candle, as it was, Clarice, and so we said, why don't we just do it together?
Yeah. Okay. So this is Pete Zonnevylle.
Yep.
So how did you know Zonners, as he is affectionately referred to?
Yeah, we known each other a long time. We were teenagers when we first met. He was in a band, and I was his drummer's roadie, so I was carrying in the drum kit and hanging around. Well, I was the crowd, I think, for the gigs. And yeah, we kind of just stayed mates through college, different universities, but we're from the same hometown, so we catch up at holidays, etc. We work in London at the same time, and then we both moved to Australia about the same sort of time. So
Okay.
yeah, just been friends since 15, so
Okay.
a long time.
Okay, so essentially it was a two-pronged attack. You were the accounting and finance expert. He was the technology expert, and together, that was a bit David Brent, wasn't it? You came together to form sustainability in 2008. So for the youngsters who might be watching this, they might not remember that 2008 was also an interesting year, because that's when the GFC hit. So you launched a business just before the GFC or during the GFC, or how did the timelines work?
I think I walked in after my second son had been born, resigned in the April 2008. We officially opened the doors 1st of July, and then everything sort of went sideways in October, November. So
wow.
Yeah, pretty close.
Wow. Okay, so what was that? What was that like? I mean, go back a stage. Did you need to do much? I'm always curious about the conversations that take place in the background between people who decide to launch businesses and their partners and their husbands and wives. You would have a good job. Presumably, the money was rolling in, but you said no. Me and Zonners, we're going to go take over the recruitment industry, and then the GFC hit. How did those conversations go at home?
Look, my wife's been incredibly supportive all the way through. She was aware that I had the ambition to set up my own firm. Myself and Pete sat around the dining table with her when she was 8 months pregnant, putting to her the proposal, and I guess she was very supportive and believed that we could make a fist of it. I think the GFC was rumbling around in the background as the credit crunch. It was in the US, but hadn't really had its global implications. So yeah, I guess we'd sort of said, look, we'll roll the dice, see what happens over the first year. We won't pay ourselves a salary. We'll keep it very, very lean. Fortunately, we had a bit of money in the bank, and then we'll see where we are after a year's time and make a decision at that point. So yeah, unfortunately, that first year was good, was successful. We were able to take advantage of some of the of the market. We had really good client relationships. They really looked after us. The suppliers really looked after us. We were able to attract some really good talent in that time frame as well, who'd not been treated particularly well by their current employers. And yeah, we were able to actually grow the business in that first year, which was so counterintuitive.
So despite being a startup and despite launching in one of the worst times economically ever, your first year was okay.
Yeah. I think somebody said, "Oh, your first year is the hardest," and I'd always joked that I hoped it would be, because we'd actually had quite a lot of fun. It's very simple setting up a business in those early days. It's you just pick up the phone and pick up business and sort of fill the jobs and crack on and bring the revenue through. So, and then as I said, we were lucky. We brought some fantastic people and were able to grow from 2 to 5, had ourselves a bit of money at the end of the year, but just kept reinvesting the money back into the business. Okay,
great, cool. So you must have come out of GFC, out of your first year, thinking, cool, this is going to be a good run. But we're gonna talk about and obviously ultimately it has been, but there's been a couple of bumps in the road. Can you tell us what, I suppose, and it's not unique to sustainability, the challenges you experienced are common with a lot of startups, small businesses, but what were the main challenges that you and Pete experienced when you started to try and grow sustainability beyond that kind of 5-person headcount?
Yeah, I think the model that we'd had at the time was hire experienced consultants, bring them in, give them a desk, treat them well, pay them good commissions, and the rest would sort of look after itself. And that worked reasonably well for time. But ultimately, we got to a point where we just got caught up in the day to day. We got caught up in running desks, running assignments, filling jobs, chasing the fish in front of us, and we perhaps hadn't invested enough time into bringing in new recruits. And therefore, after a few years, our network sort of dried up in that space. We didn't have a training program in place to bring in rookies, and we possibly made some bad hires. People that weren't quite right for us culturally. So, ultimately, after about 5 or 6 years, we found ourselves in a position where we weren't quite at the size and strength that we'd wanted to be at the beginning.
Mm. So this is where the story gets interesting and potentially, hopefully, inspirational. I certainly think it's a really, really inspirational story, because so you confided in me once. You and I actually caught up in Melbourne. You were things were going so well. You even had eyes on potentially launching in Melbourne, and you told me over that coffee in Melbourne that you and Pete had sat down after 5 or 6 years. And you concluded that the business wasn't where you'd wanted it to be. Yep. And you even had a conversation where you both said to each other, mate, do you know what? We could go and get a serviced office, zero overheads. We could both bill $500,000 each. We could have a very easy, comfortable life, take the kids to school, pick them up from school. Let's not worry about growing a business. Let's just try and have an easy life. So you almost talked about just flatlining sustainability to just you and Pete. But that didn't happen.
No. Look, I think during those 6 years, I was thinking about the title the other day. It could have been called Ninth Time Lucky. It wasn't like we drove to the edge of the cliff oblivious with our eyes shut. We were aware of some of the challenges that we'd had. We just hadn't been able to get the model right at the time. So, we'd grown the business to about 10 or 12, and unfortunately had lost people along the way, or not unfortunately in certain cases. And so we were back to a team of 4. And I guess, you're absolutely right. We said, well, what do we want to do from here? We hit the crossroads. We said, do we want to, as you said, become really small, do it as a 2-man band, cottage industry? Do we want to try and grow it up to a middle-sized business, or do we really want to have another look at this? We spoke to a number of different people, yourself included, and a couple of our mentors. And really, when we actually analysed it, there was 2 things. One, some of the options weren't particularly appealing, but also, I guess, comfortingly, we've been told that from the outside, people thought we had a good brand, we had a good business, but just needed a bit more energy. And I think we'd realised that we had strengths in some key areas, but we were a little bit weak in a couple of areas. So we needed to strengthen out the bench from a management perspective. As I said, we hadn't ever, neither myself or Pete, had ever trained up rookies or trainees or brought people through that sort of program. We hadn't been really focused enough on the desks that we were running. So I was still running a pretty generalist accounting desk. Pete was running a pretty generalist tech desk, and we really needed that commitment to niche and that the cliche inch wide, mile deep approach. And so we spoke to Ed and Ben and said, look, this is where we are. This is what we're doing. Would you be interested in coming on board? The view being 25% of something is better than 50% of not very much. And that's where it was. We just felt that we had more that we could offer. We painted ourselves a bit into a corner, or some of the options that we'd tried hadn't worked, but we thought, let's go again, and let's try this model instead. And that's, I guess, that was a massive turning point for us.
So you had that conversation, you and Pete. You quickly abandoned the idea of downsizing, and then it sounds like you when you got your heads together, you identified very quickly where you'd been going wrong. So is it fair to say that it was a combination of identifying where you'd been going wrong, and then connecting with some people who helped you build the business? To talk to us about how Ed and Ben came into the business, and of course Sinead from Lotus. How did all this happen?
Yeah, of course. I mean, that was again fortuitous good luck, call it what you will. I think it was, we'd known Ed and Ben for a long time, played football together. They'd had fantastic careers themselves within tech recruitment.
Yeah.
And we're very aligned professionally, ethically, morally, ambition-wise, all of those sorts of things. Similar to where we'd been, they weren't 100% comfortable with the businesses that they were working at the time. So it's just good timing. And again, fortunate that both of their partners gave them the support to go out and to take the risk, to roll the dice, to gamble away any savings. We said, look, this is where we want to be. This is what the vision is, to build a really market-leading boutique accounting, tech, and projects business. They're fantastic building out templates. They're fantastic on the training development side. They both run really niche teams all the way through. So that was really complementary to what we did. They had really complementary client base, which was a nice bonus, and just fresh eyes and just a bit more bandwidth across the leadership team. Just that, if you've got 4 people taking on some of the tasks of running a business, it means that everybody can do a bit more day to day, and everybody can do a bit more on the business, not just in the business. And as you say, at the same time, just weirdly, coincidentally, we were introduced to Sinead, who was with Laura and wanted to set up Lotus People. And again, we said to Ben in a headlight, I know we said we're going to run an accounting tech business, but how about we also at the same time co-launch an office support brand, and this is what we're thinking with that. And they were into it. I think the synergy between the 6 of us was really strong, and has continued to be really strong all the way through. So it felt like a bit of a no-brainer. So and really good luck.
And so you met Sinead and Laura. It was all within the same kind of few months, wasn't it? Is that?
Yeah, I don't think Ed and Ben had even signed their contracts when we were in conversations. So, they were a good plan B. No, it was just really fortuitous timing, and it enabled us to go from a team of 4 up to a team of 8 very, very quickly. And from there, we've grown out with that new energy and that impetus. It was like a startup with a bit of money behind it. So we had a bit more flexibility, a bit more freedom. Obviously, learned from our mistakes the first time around, put the structure in place, and and I guess the rest, as they say, far is history.
But you weren't finished. So you then met Holly. You then met Kay with how did those introductions happen? Was it? And I suppose you would have gone into the conversations with Holly to do the digital piece and Kay to do the health piece, knowing that you kind of knew how to do this because you've been through it with Sinead, right?
Yeah, and it'd been really successful there. The model had worked really well. And Holly had worked with Ed and Ben before. We knew that she was, absolute market leader in the digital space. Again, similar frustrations to Ed and Ben in the company she was working for. And we knew that she was ready to try and do it for herself. And so we offered her the investment, I suppose, the money up front and the support and the infrastructure, so she could just come in and hit the ground running. And then, Kay, again, it was, a bit of luck. Somebody knew we had this model in place and had introduced us to it. I can't say healthcare was on the radar particularly. It wasn't a strategically brilliant idea. It was just a bit of luck. We went, oh yeah, nursing sounds good. It'd be, if nothing else, it'd be a nice hedge against, just in case things go bad in the corporate world. Maybe nursing will be a nice thing to have. And obviously aging populations. So we knew that there was some long-term upside there. Seen some pretty successful medical recruitment firms to that point. And again, the chemistry with Kay is fantastic, and culturally really aligned and professionally really aligned. And because we had the model already in place, it was kind of a reasonably easy and quick conversation. So and then between this, the 7 of us, we've then been able to grow out all of the brands. Lots of cross-selling and support and fresh ideas all the time. So lots of really good innovation, and having that balance between the men and the women on the boards.
Yeah.
Just awesome, and you just get so many different ideas and insights. They're a lot younger than us, so we get some more contemporary concepts coming through, which is great. So I mean, I'm the oldest in the office these days, so it brings loads and loads of energy, which helps us at so many different levels with clients and candidates, bringing on recruiters, training up the recruiters, developing the teams, and now we've got a really good career path for the guys that are coming in as well. So which we never had until we went through this stage 5 years ago.
So look, again, sorry for repeating myself. I find it wonderful that you and Zonner sat down and nearly did what you did, and now today you are four brands, 50 people. Nobody's cruising through COVID, but I know you guys are doing as well as anybody else through COVID, and I think that's a testament to the strength of the brands that you've created. But have you and Pete ever gone for a beer and reflected on that conversation and where your heads were then and where your business is now? Have you ever had that chat?
I think we all have. I think we all feel really fortunate that the decisions that we made have turned out the way that they have. As I say, we tried lots of other things in the run up to this, and we've tried up lots of things since that haven't quite taken off. So it's life changing, really.
Totally.
The concept of me recruiting out of my bedroom wasn't very appealing then. It certainly wouldn't have been very appealing in the last 6 months. It was really just glad that Ed and Ben were brave enough to take the leap, and that we were introduced to the ladies when we did at the right time, and just at the right time in their careers and where they wanted to be.
But mate, you call it fortuitous and you call it good luck. I'd probably disagree with that. I think it's to do with. I think ultimately, you do the right thing. You're good people. You've got a good name, good reputation in the marketplace, good network. All these things click into place, and the universe rewarded you. It was, wasn't good luck. It was just going to come your way. You just had to wait a little. You just had to be patient, Martin. That's all it was, mate.
I think there's a couple of things here. Look, obviously we chose the name because we wanted to build long-term relationships with everybody, right? So it's with the team, number one, and we've got a number of people, 3 or 4, I think, in the next month or in the last month or in the next few months that are celebrating 5 years with us. So they started in this part of the journey and have stayed with us, which is great. So we've always wanted to build really long-term relationships. I was reading something the other day, which a quick anecdote, if you will, which talked about a psychological study. It looked at people who thought they were lucky and people who thought they were unlucky. And they said, look, read this paper and tell me how many photographs are in the paper. And all of the people who thought they were unlucky read it, and it took them 2.5 minutes, and they came up with the answer 43. The people who thought they were lucky took them 5 seconds. That's because on page 2, it said, stop reading, there's 43 photos in this paper. And I think that's possibly, that really resonated with me because, you need to be lucky. You do need lots of luck in this, in recruitment and in life, but I think you also need to be open to the opportunities when they present themselves. So, yes, we were lucky. Yes, the timing was right. But, you've got to have that openness to that growth mindset, as people say these days, just to say, right, let's have a go at that, and then the support of your friends and family to do it.
You have to take on the risk. You were 4 people, and suddenly you exploded in size, doubled in size, when maybe your confidence wasn't sky high, but you thought, we've got to do it. We've come this far. We've got to push forward. And I think that to me is the inspirational part of the story. So where's the business today, mate? Obviously, none of us are killing it right now, but where is sustainability today? How are you guys doing?
Good. We've been using this word a lot. Been really lucky all the way through. The focus that we put in place over the years has really helped us out. So all of those, that real, and it's not just a throwaway thing, something we live and breathe. that building stuff for the long term, the relationships we've got with the clients, the quality of the candidates that we place has really held us in good stead. Contractor numbers have been really good, which has always been a big focus, and that's helped a lot with a downturn. You know, you've just got that stability and that cash flow and predictability to the P&L, which just helps with decision making. I think takes a lot of pressure off rather than just having a perm business, which is very up and down. So yeah, look, I mean, our feeling is that we've hopefully seen the worst of it. As long as the numbers can stay under control, the Australian market seems to be in a really good shape. We've I mean, if you look at temp versus perm across the 4 businesses, so that's 8 different metrics. We were up quarter on quarter, 8 out of 8. So, which is really good. And in fact, on certain businesses, I mean, Halves is going through that growth, and Dig, and parts of our business, there's actually been growth year on year. So, Q1 versus Q1. So look, it's we've come out in a pretty good place. The team's stuck with us. We've stuck with the team. We've really looked after them through the whole thing. We've put in a lot of initiatives around support, about making sure that they're all healthy physically, and we've got lots of initiatives in there. We talked about yoga and with football, and we do a lot of stuff together outside of work from a sporting perspective. Had a lady come in recently to talk to us about mental health and some of the challenges there. There's obviously a fair amount of anxiety in the market at the moment. So give us some tools to help there. We're going to get the team to go through that process as well. So no, we're taking nothing for granted. Absolutely, certainly not feet on the desk smoking cigars. But it's, if you'd have given us this position 6 months ago, I'd have bit your arm off.
And you know what? That's what I'm hearing from most of the industry. Most recruitment businesses, most recruitment leaders are saying, do you know what? We're not in as bad a position as we feared we would be. And like you, most recruitment leaders think we are past the worst. I sort of see Christmas as a watershed moment. I think if we can get through Christmas, hopefully somebody magically produces a vaccine or some kind of sentiment of a vaccine in the not too distant future from there, and then who knows? I think the Australian economy will have to sustain us for a while, for probably a good 12 months before we go wide and the borders open again. But
yeah, and I think obviously I think the government's made some really good calls, and it's been pretty supportive in lots of areas for small businesses in lots of areas. So that's been helpful. I think you guys will feel it coming out. We've certainly had our restrictions lifted for a long time, or reasonably long time, and just feel more positivity around town. There's more people coming back into the office, more people about, and all of those things start to add to confidence, which leads to recruitment, and the purse strings start to loosen up. And I also think it's going to be a fascinating year next year, right? And I think you're right. Christmas and 2021 is going to be really, really interesting. It could be a gangbuster, right? It's you've got a lot of candidates in the marketplace who haven't changed jobs in a year. So there's some real latency from a job seeker perspective in that regard. A couple of firms starting to recruit again, and the debt chairs start to spin. And I went to see a client yesterday in tech, and they've got really big ambitions for growth. So so there's definitely an ambition out there. There's some money still flowing around the market within private equity, and etc. So there's some good stuff there. And unfortunately, there's been a number of recruiters have probably gone back to the UK over this time frame.
I mean, from a selfish Rectorec perspective, that's interesting for me, because I think there's lots of junior recruiters who came into recruitment and went, if this is what recruitment is, I'm out, I'm gone. Yeah. So they've all gone. Then we've got an older generation of recruiters who've said, right, that's, I'm not going through this again. They've gone. Then you've got a lot of recruiters who've gone internal. They've gone. Then you've got a lot of recruiters who lost their jobs from the UK, couldn't get another job. They've had to go back to the UK. They're gone.
And never to return, right? So or not to return for another couple of years. So
correct.
you know, and I don't want to immerse or anything about any of this sort of stuff. It's horrible that people have had to lose their jobs. But if we look at next year, the impact of that is there's a bit of a vacuum there potentially, particularly if the market starts to spin again. So, look, we're in a good position. We've worked hard to look after the guys. We've continued to push them through training and retraining, and obviously it's a different market to the one where we were in, you know, in January and through last year, 2019, and so just making sure that they're ready for some of that. There's obviously plenty of challenges from clients with regards to price and fees, and we're having lots of those sorts of renegotiations, and trying to make sure that we're well positioned with those organisations. But no, generally positive.
So let's fast forward 12 months, and hopefully COVID is rapidly becoming a distant memory. 2022. What does the future look like for sustainability? What are the grand plans?
Sustainability itself, I think there's an opportunity for us to, you know, bring on 5 or 6 new heads to complement some of the desks we've already got. There's an opportunity to potentially launch other verticals within that space. There's obviously there's going to be a lot of government spending in and around infrastructure, engineering, consultancy, those sorts of spaces, which we don't have at the moment. So potentially bring in a new vertical there, or even launch a sustained consulting brand, or sustain, you know, whatever it may be. So there's opportunities there. Obviously across the business, you know, Lotus will expand. It will grow its HR practice, which it's already started on, and rebuild its temp and perm practice. There's some really good opportunities within that, and obviously the health brand is going to continue to could double in size. So there's
Melbourne at any point. Anybody going to come down to Melbourne? Remember us down in Melbourne? No,
I think those plans are on hold, Pete. In all seriousness, it's an interesting one. I think it's probably less need to have a national presence these days. You know, if we're going to work with clients remotely, we've been doing it from our bedrooms. You know, the candidates are working remotely. The requirement to be face to face and pressed in the flesh, and sadly, the big boozy lunches are probably, if not a thing of the past, they're probably not as important or as required as they once were. So, you know, our health practice is a national practice, so we've proven that can work, placing people remotely. You know, if we have clients that have those demands in Melbourne or Brisbane or Perth, then we can probably service them from here.
Sure. Okay, mate.
Sorry. Sorry.
No offence taken. Well, mate, thank you so much. I'm genuinely delighted that you and Zonners ended that beer in agreement to pull your socks up. I won't ask you who actually dragged the other one along. I won't embarrass you. It might have been Zonners telling you to pull your head in, but we'll leave that for the mystery files.
He does normally. Yeah.
And mate, I'm also genuinely happy for you that you've been so lucky over the last few years, and that you guys are, you know, you're still standing strong. Fair play.
Thanks, Pete. Thanks for all your help.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for being involved. We'll speak soon.
Cheers, mate. Take care,
mate. Bye-bye.